Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Everyone's concerned about grades. I'm sure you're all familiar with the 90 to 100% is an A, 80 to 90% is a B. Well, forget all about that. I don't grade this way because it isn't very effective. Have you ever seen The Biggest Loser? Well, I take my inspiration from Jillian. My job is to make you the best communicator possible. A lot of times this requires a little extra motivation. Now, I'm not going to get in your face, but my system is designed to push you towards your potential. Like Jillian, I want to take you from the person that you think you are, force you to recognize your potential, and then send you out at the end of the season the best you can be. On the first day of class, I asked how many of you suck at public speaking, and most people raised their hands. I've taught over 1,000 students just like you, so I know that you have the potential to be a great speaker. All it takes is confidence, a system to structure your message, practice, and a little polish. So I'm going to be your coach, and I'm going to push you to be better than you think is possible. It may not make me popular in the moment, but I think you will find that you appreciate it at the end of the semester. The first thing we need to do is agree on terminology. I don't grade assignments, I score them. The only grade I calculate is the one at the end of the semester. Until then, you should focus on accumulating as many points as possible. I am a tough scorer, but an easy grader. What this means is that I critically assess your assignments and assign a score using the full range. Rather than being limited to the top 30% of the grading scale, where anything less than 70% is failing, I use the full range, from 1 to 20, from 1 to 100, whatever the assignment calls for. This allows for much greater precision and feedback. This also means that your scores will be a lot lower than you're used to. Don't panic. The curve at the end of the semester will account for this. In fact, when it comes time to hand out final grades, I tend to be a big softie. Historically, about half the people in my classes get A's. That's okay with me because it proves the system works. So here is how my grading system works. Imagine there is a tall mountain. My job is to get you to the top of that mountain. Those of you who have ever climbed mountains know that climbing a mountain like this is not easy. You have to develop skills and stamina if you are to have any chance of reaching the top. That is what this class is all about. I grade the first speech the same way I grade the last speech. Essentially, I've set the bar at the top of the mountain and am telling you to hit it. Are you going to make it to the top of the mountain the first time out? Of course not. Well, I'll be honest with you. The first speeches generally don't go very well. You're nervous, you're not sure what to expect, there's a lot going on, so you probably won't make it very far up the mountain. It is very common to score 20, 30, maybe 40 points out of 100. And this is when everybody panics. Oh my God, I'm failing the class, I'm failing the class. No, that's exactly what I expect you to do on the first speech. You have to trust me when I say that the curve at the end of the semester accounts for this. But a funny thing happens the second time around. You'll find that the second speech is much easier and you'll make it further up the mountain. And then you'll find that the third speech is even easier and you'll make it even higher. And by the final speech, you're climbing the mountain like a pro. I think you'll surprise yourself at just how great of a speaker you've become. One of the key benefits of this method is that there are no moving targets that you're trying to hit. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're taking a typical public speaking class and you give your first speech. You had all of the typical troubles, but really it wasn't a bad speech for the first time out, so you get 85. And then you come back and you give your second speech, which is much better simply because you've been there, done that. And it was pretty good, so you get an 87. And then you come into my office whining, my second speech was so much better than my first speech, but I only got 2 more points. What's the deal? And then I have to explain that it's because I expected you to do much better on the second speech and thus grade it differently. It's too much, and it doesn't allow you to appreciate the improvements that you're making with each speech. So what I do is I grade the first speech the same way as I grade the last one. That way, each time you give a speech, you can see how much closer you're getting to the top of the mountain. Again, I only focus on the scores. I don't even try to calculate how many points are an A on each speech, how many points are a B. Every person is different. We all take different paths up the mountain. If you really must know if you're on track to get the final grade that you want, I've created a website that will allow you to compare your progress to previous classes. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Just know that every semester is different. I know a lot of people stress about this, but try to focus simply on earning as many points as possible on each assignment. If you do the assignments and you put forth the effort, you'll find that the final grades take care of themselves. Honestly, if I were you, I wouldn't even start thinking about grades until after the second speech. The way this class is structured, whether you get an A or a B is determined by how well you do on the final two speeches, the outlines, and the final exam. At the end of the day, this is a 1,000 level freshman class. Am I going to grade you on whether or not you made it all the way up to the top of a 4,000 level mountain? Of course not. When it comes time to assign grades, the bar isn't that high. But what I found is that if I set the bar at a freshman level, nobody bothers to even try to beat that. They'll just do the very minimum to get by and nobody learns anything. But if I set the bar high and I push you, you'll far exceed your own expectations. Keys to a good grade. Number 1 is attendance. This is a professional environment, not unlike a job, and I expect you to be here every day. But you're allowed 4 absences, no questions asked. We're all adults here, so you don't need to let me know why you weren't in class. Just know that you have 4 and budget them wisely. You don't want to waste them early in the semester simply because you don't feel like coming to class. Life happens, and you may wish you had them back when your car breaks down or you're called into work unexpectedly. There are only 4 types of excused absences. 1 is military duty, and you'll need a letter from your commanding officer. The second is jury duty, and you'll need something from the court showing you were there. Third is if you are hospitalized. Simply being sick is not an excused absence, so you will want to save some of your 4 days just in case. And the fourth is religious holidays, but you'll need to let me know what those are by the end of the second week of class. So you're allowed 4 absences. After the fourth, there are consequences. The first is that your grade becomes capped. If you have 5 absences, you cannot get any higher than a B in the class, regardless of how well you score on the assignments. If you have 7 absences, you cannot get any higher than a C, and so forth. The second consequence is that you lose 25 points for each absence after the fourth. So if you have 5 absences, you lose 25 points. If you have 6 absences, you lose 50. This is where people's grades really start to drop. Most people who get C's in my class, or lower, is because of a lack of attendance. 2 tardies equal 1 absence. If you are late or you have to leave early, that counts as a tardy. To reward people for coming to class every day, there are 50 bonus points for perfect attendance. This is the maximum number of extra credit points allowed. The second key to getting a good grade is to come to office hours. Come by and talk to me about your topic. Putting together a speech is not easy. Why not allow me to help you with this? The third key is to take reflection seriously. We're going to take 5 minutes at the end of class for you to answer these questions. Spend the full 5 minutes writing as much as you can. You're not allowed to write for 30 seconds and then start putting your books away. You have to spend the entire time writing quietly. You cannot leave until time is up. I know this sounds juvenile, but as with everything in my class, there is neuroscience behind it. 5 minutes spent in active reflection is the equivalent of 45 minutes of intense studying. That seems like a pretty good investment. Here's the logic behind this. We're going to talk over and over again about the importance of repetition. Repeat, repeat, repeat. You have to repeat things over and over again if you want people to remember what you say. Well, this first question is you repeating to yourself what you thought was most important. While this is valuable, I really want you to focus on the last question. I want you putting the information into the context of a story. As we're going to talk about, people remember stories much better than they do individual facts. By thinking how you will use this information, you're putting yourself at the center of a story, exponentially increasing the chances that you'll remember the information later. Finally, read the material. I cannot believe how many people don't read the textbook or the handouts. Trust me when I say this will be very obvious if you don't. One of the things that I'll harp on over and over is that written language and spoken language are very different. I know there are professors who repeat exactly what's in the textbook. I was there. I remember thinking, this is great. I don't have to read the textbook. But what we're learning from brain imaging studies is that the way you process information that you read is very different from the way that you process what you hear. Even though you may think what you're reading is boring, reading is a much more complex experience. Because of this, you are likely to retain much more information if you read it. So simply listening to a professor repeat what's in the textbook is not the same thing as reading the textbook. So even if you're in a class like that, you need to read the textbook. Fortunately, this isn't a class like that. Even if it was, we're not going to have time to cover everything that's in the textbook. We're only going to be hitting the highlights, but you're responsible for knowing everything that's in the material. As with everything, feel free to ask questions.